Good morning. Let me tell you about Clarence Jordan. He was an interesting man. He lived in the latter half of last century. He died in 1967. Clarence grew up in southern America, southern USA, in Georgia, and was concerned from a young age about the racial and economic injustice that he experienced in the communities in which he lived. And he determined to do something about it. And he believed that agriculture could be a way out, where improved agricultural techniques would improve the crops and give people more access to food for the families and to sell. So he went and studied agriculture at university, but as he worked and thought through it, he realised that the issues were bigger and that part of the problem was spiritual. So he went and did some study at the theological seminary, the Southern Baptist in Kentucky, and he came away with a PhD in New Testament. There he met and married Florence, and they met Martin and Mabel England, who were missionaries, Southern Baptist missionaries who'd returned. Together the four of them dreamed and thought of new possibilities. And one was of a Christian community, a farm, in which they could work together and live together with other people, and people of mixed race and culture, and anyone would be welcome. The principles of the farm were fairly simple. Everyone is a child of God, everyone is welcome, but if you're part of this community, you share the common life of the community, eating together, worshipping together, working together, and sharing all things in common. And that was really important. They also were very concerned about sustainability of the earth and caring for the earth, being good stewards. And so their practices were as good as they could to care for the earth and its creatures. The farm went well. They had 440 acres near Americus in Georgia, still there, and they grew crops and made money by selling the produce, making other things, selling at a roadside market. They sold in a marketplace. All was good, until the rise of the racial issues, of civil rights and segregation laws and all of that. In the 50s and 60s, things grew pretty tough and grim. Groups like Ku Klux Klan rose up and created problems, as well as the wider community. And as they realised that this community were mixed, there were blacks and whites together, they started getting death threats and other sorts of threats. One night, 300 of their trees were chopped down. Their roadside market was bombed several times. There were roadside or drive-by shootings of the buildings. Lots of problems. They didn't get any support from the legislature. The state governor called in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to do raids on the farm and try and close them down. The police weren't of much help. And even the local Christian communities, the churches, excluded them because they were mixed. They would come as a community, and the churches were segregated. The words of Jesus that Clarence Jordan and this community proclaimed and lived out were a threat and a challenge to the wider world. In the end, the threats didn't have much effect, so the local community created an economic boycott. They weren't allowed to sell any of their produce locally, no one would buy it. Their way out was to do mail order. They sold pecan nuts across America to other people and communities that supported what they were doing. And their little slogan was, "Help us get the nuts out of Georgia." That kept them going and survived and thrived in the end. This little community was also one that gave rise to Habitats for Humanity. As other people came in and had the bigger vision of building homes, and so they nurtured that. It was a wonderful prophetic community that lived and preached and spoke the words of Jesus, the way of God, that is inclusive of all people, that seeks justice, economic, racial, gender, age. Everyone is equal, and everyone is to have a seat at the table. Everyone is equal at the table of God, and everyone deserves their share of their needs fulfilled. And at the table of God, it's not a place where one has far too much and one doesn't have enough. All have enough if we share. And there's justice and there's freedom and there's life and all are included. That was their way, the way of God, and it challenged the communities that were racist and bigoted and violent. And Koinonia community, as they were called, would not fight back with violence, but they would respond with love. And these kinds of ways of Jesus irked people and brought more violence towards them, as it does in other places around the world, in other communities. And Jesus warned of this. This week we read in Luke's story of Jesus where he says, "Did you think I came to bring unity and peace? A false peace that everyone thinks everything's nice and pretends it's all good? No, I came to bring division. And families will be divided against each other. Communities, villages. Because when my words are heard and lived, they will challenge the powers, the wealthy, the privileged, the status quo. They will speak into that and they will challenge it and seek to break it open and bring equity and justice and peace, true peace. But people will hate me. They will hate my words and they'll hate you when you live them. And they'll react and respond. And that's what happened to Clarence Jordan and the Koinonia community. It happens in other parts of the world when people speak out, when people do what Jesus did and live that life. And it's not just other people, it's churches and that as well. Wherever there's entrenched belief systems and cultural systems and cultures and traditions and status quo, whenever people benefit from the way things are, they'll resist and fight when they're challenged. And Jesus' words confront and challenge us at every point until there is justice for all, until all are included and the way of God is lived, the reign of God becomes a reality. There are many issues that we face that I think Jesus' words speak into and challenge our nation, our communities, our families. You know, families hold the secrets of violence and abuse and domestic violence. In some families, girls are just not given the opportunity. In communities, in the world of finance and corporate world, employment, education, here and around the world, women and children are not given the same opportunities. Women and girls, rather, are not given the same opportunities as men and boys. That's not the way of God, the way of Jesus. Refugees, people who have nothing, who have lost everything, whose lives through persecution, oppression, warfare, whatever, natural disasters, who've lost everything and are seeking a new way to live and be safe and secure, are not given an opportunity. Unless they can contribute well to our country, they're put down the list. Some of the most needy people don't get our work in. Desperate people. And yet, the way of God is to reach out and give hospitality to the stranger in your midst. There's Indigenous peoples around the world whose land, whose culture, language, tradition, wisdom has been rejected, taken away, who seek justice and life and equity and justice, what is right. Their land back, the use of their land, their culture to be nurtured and cared for and their wisdom to be listened to. And that's resisted because those who have land and wealth and privilege and power are challenged by it. The environment in which we live, which is suffering under the weight of human abuse and overuse and mining and pollution and carbon and all the other issues that confronts our world. And yet too many deny it. The science is there, the theology is there, everything is there, saying the earth is our mother and we need to care for it. We need to look after this earth that looks after us. And we're not doing that. We need to change dramatically how we live. And our young people are telling us that. But we're not listening because we are privileged and we will need to give up. We will need to let go and we don't want to. The words of Jesus come through young voices, through scientists, through people who are warning, but we don't want to listen. The words are too hard. That's what Jesus is saying. My words are hard. My words are about justice and equity and peace for all people. And when that's not present, my words will cut through and will challenge and turn things upside down. And his invitation this week is to hear in our own lives where perhaps our way of living, our way of being is unjust, hurts other people, has too much, and we need to share with those who have too little. We need to simplify our lives and let go of the things that we cling to. Let go of our privilege, our desire for more and more materialism, our dependence on money and possessions and new things, and trust in God that there'll be enough for everyone if we let go. This is the way of Jesus, and it's a challenging way. But it's a message that the world needs now as much, if not more than ever before. We need to listen and abide and let go and find life. Life which will be richer and deeper and fuller for us and for everyone. And everyone will have a fair share of the resources they need to live. An equal seat at the table of humanity, knowing that they are children of God, loved by God. Will you join in the way of Jesus, hear his challenging words, and allow them to change you? Will you walk with him into the way of new life? Amen.